yhwach's elite guard are one of the most powerful groups in shonen. Gerard Valkyrie, Pernita, Lilybaro, and Askenaklivar are demigods who are all worthy of holding their title. But ever since Asken's promotion to the guard, people have questioned who exactly he replaced in the group, or maybe he didn't replace anybody at all and was just promoted. This is one of the most talked about topics in Thousand Year Blood War because you had Sternritters like Grimmy and Royd who, despite not being confirmed an elite, had power to be considered one. I know that there's a ton of questions and theories about all of this, so in today's video I plan on breaking down and analyzing all of the Sternritters so that we can find out who was probably a candidate for the elites, and also who I think should have been one. Every Sternritter is separated into 4 different tiers. We have definitely not candidates, probably not candidates but still impressive, possibly were candidates, and the last tier is definitely were candidates. Now, the first 2 tiers will be more of a quick analysis, while the last 2 tiers will be a more in-depth explanation on why the Sternritters I chose were fitting candidates for the elites. Anyways, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and let's get into it. So, starting out with the first tier of Sternritters who were definitely not considered candidates for the elites, we have Candace Catnip, Robert Alcatrone, King Du, Driscoll, Jerome, and Bernice. None of these guys were remotely impressive enough to ever be considered candidates. Robert is the only one on this tier that maybe can be argued to be in the tier above. He went from going toe-to-toe with Shunsui and taking out his eye, but then he went to being blatantly stated to be on the low end of power among the Sternritter. He is excellent at closing the distance between him and his opponent, which I feel like it has to do with his script. I mean, seriously, if you look at this scan, he closes the distance between him and Shunsui in an instant, and he blitzes Shunsui and shoots out his eye. It's crazy and also disappointing because, like I've said before, it really seems like Kubo changed his mind about how strong he wanted Robert to be. Or maybe Robert's only job was to make Shunsui look even more badass with his eye patch. On to the next tier of Sternritters who were probably not candidates, but were still very impressive. We have BG9, Meninas, Lloyd, Nanana, Master Masculine, Shaz Domino, Giselle, and Pepe. All these guys are impressive and are walking on the line of being considered. Shaz Domino and BG9 don't get talked about enough and are the most unique on this tier in my opinion. Shaz Domino's script viability gave him the perfect regeneration similar to Gerard where he couldn't die. And the fact that Shaz was able to use his very script to become independent of Grimmy's control makes him quite special among the Sternritters. BG9 being a robot and having the broken ability to analyze and counter his opponents also makes him quite interesting, and I really do think he is underrated. Master Masculine is the powerhouse in this tier that doesn't need much explaining. He is powerful enough to take out 2 Bankai wielding captains without even having to use his full standing. He clearly ranks in the top of the Sternritters, but not enough to be considered an elite. So wifey, Giselle is stated to be the second strongest Bambi, along with having the power to create an entire zombie army if she wanted to. Meninas could literally be argued to be the physically strongest character in the series. She was able to immobilize a weakened Kenpachi with 1 punch, and depending on how you interpret King Figure on World, it is said Menina's power was literally unbeatable even when compared to Kenpachi's Araki. Pepe and Lloyd are 2 powerful characters who possibly could be in the tier above. Lloyd being able to copy people's power and techniques puts him above most of the Sternritters. Though I do think it's unfortunate that his opponent was Kenpachi's Araki, who could just become more and more powerful. Like I've said before, Pepe was probably the most disappointing Sternritter to me simply because how much he was hyped up. His design with his staff made me think he was like a wizard or something, and Asken even called Pepe a monster. He was able to pressure a royal palace trained Byakuya, and people might not like it, but he probably would have won if Mayuri didn't step in. Pepe had Hisagi under control and made Byakuya Zanpakuto useless for him to use. As much as people hate him, he is more impressive than most of the Sternritter. Nanana, Sternritter U, the underbelly, is probably the most underrated one in this tier. He fought Rose in the first invasion and later showed up unharmed while Rose was covered in bandages later on. He also was able to paralyze Aizen for 5 minutes because of his morphine ability and probably would have killed Renji if they did fight since Nanana observed him all night. His underbelly ability is pretty busted and I wish we have gotten a fight between the two. Okay, so on to the next tier, we have Sternritters who possibly were candidates for the elites. The first ones in this tier are Asnot and Latato. The fear-inducing badass himself, Asnot has one of the most broken abilities in this series, capable of making cool and level-headed captains like Byakuya Kuchiki freak out and scream in fear. Not only is Asnot one of the strongest Sternritters, he was featured heavily in the first invasion and was definitely the most talked about during the time. Also, the fact that yhwach personally recruited him along with him having a special vault standing makes me believe Asnot was at least a candidate for the elites. When talking about the strongest regular Sternritters, you always hear the big three like Asnot, Bambieta, and Basby talked about. But people always forget about Latato, who is in the same ballpark as them, but also in my opinion has slightly better feats than both Basby and Asnot. Basby being the more arguable one. Latato is not only one of the strongest Sternritter, but she clearly is above the other Bambis by a large margin in strength while also being their leader. It's different from Bambieta, who is more of the self-proclaimed leader, mostly because of her being the alpha, compared to Latato, who everyone respects and listens to. Latato has fought True Shikai Ichigo and Byakuya with help pretty casually without being one-shotted despite being weaker than them, and even didn't suffer any injuries except a small bruise to the face. She survived a power-enhanced punch from Meninias and took her out without killing her. I think this is one of the most impressive things she has done, considering Meninia's strength is on the same level as Kenpachi Zaraki's. And it's really crazy to me how Latato only brushed off that punch, but also took someone out that rivals Kenpachi in physical strength. Her script, the Glutton, is underrated and people forget it has an extended ability. With it, she can literally eat anything she wants, objects and even abilities like Basby's flames, which then she could use to make herself more powerful along with attacking using those flames. She did this in Camp for Your Own World when she ate poison from Lolly, giving her the ability to fire poison arrows. She also had Pepe screaming in fear before she killed him, and she's the only person stated to not be afraid of Grimmy. Latato is smart, powerful, and terrifying, and I really think people should start seeing how impressive she is and how she can clearly hang in the same class as someone like Basby and Asnot. Up next is Basby and Bambieta, who probably are the most anticipated choices for this tier. Now, despite how underwhelming Basby was, I do think he was probably considered a candidate for the elites. Narratively, Basby is kinda implied and hyped up to be one of the strongest Sternritter close to the elite level. He grew up as a rival to yhwach, and a lot of people don't know this, but Basby is kinda royalty among the Quincy's, being the son of a lord who ruled over a castle. Basby's greatest feats are fighting Royal Palace trained Renji and Rukia at the same time without difficulty, and also survived an attack from Yamamoto that would have killed him and two others if his flames didn't offset Yamamoto's. Basby is definitely powerful, but why do I think he was considered a candidate? So a lot of people think that when Askin was promoted to the elites, there was only one available spot and that Askin was replacing someone, but this was never stated, and two things have proven this otherwise plus one appearance, but the appearance I will talk about later in the next tier. So the first thing is that when Askin came out of the shadows along with the other elites, he's genuinely surprised that he was the only Sternritter from below getting promoted. Meaning there were others also being considered just like Askin, or he expected someone else along with him to get promoted. Another thing is that when Basby goes to fight yhwach himself is even surprised that Basby wasn't chosen, even though he is yhwach's right-hand man and was there when the elites were summoned. Before this, Askin was already wondering if he was going to get chosen or not, so it is possible he replaced someone, but it's obvious that there were more than one spot available for those worthy and strong enough to be considered elites. The elites are not like the Gote 13 or the Espada. Nothing suggests that there were only a group of 4, especially after Udia was confirmed to be an elite. It really seems like all the Sternritters wanted a promotion for promotion's sake. Like, some were more eager than others, which probably lies with two factors. 1, their knowledge on what happens to the unworthy, and 2, their personal desires. We literally see almost every Sternritter trying to do something bold, like going after special war powers. The Bambis go after Kenpachi, then Ichigo, then 8 Sternritters go after Ichigo to try and take his head, saying that if they were to do so, yhwach would probably grant them anything. Even Robert, who was implied to have lived through yhwach's first Ashwelin, realized that when Yhwach left the Soul Society, he was deemed unworthy, so Robert probably also thought he might have gotten chosen. So yeah, Basby was probably a candidate for the elites, and I think narratively he really should have been promoted. It would have made so much sense because of his goal of trying to kill Yhwach. This would have been the perfect, and I mean the perfect opportunity for Basby to get closer to Yhwach so that he could try and carry out this goal. Yhwach could have given Basby a massive power up fitting for an elite. Blue phoenix wings and blue flames for his full standing. Like, Kubo, seriously, why? Like, this would have been so cool for Basby, and I think he probably would have been my favorite Sternritter if Kubo did go down this road. The last one in this tier is Bambieta, who is here for a few different reasons. She was kind of seen as the alpha that led the other female Sternritters. Whether or not the Bambis follow Bambieta because of her power, rank, or just because of their friendship is kind of unknown, but I do think it's because of all three. Bambieta's script, the Explode, is one of the most destructive and hacks abilities among the Sternritters. She one-shotted Shinji with just one bomb and would have killed Sajin if Kubo didn't go the whole immortal route with him. Her durability kind of gets overlooked, seeing as how nobody talks about how she took multiple of her bombs, plus Sajin's sword into her and didn't even die, which is insane considering the power behind her bombs and Sajin's Bankai. So something funny I thought about is that Bambieta seems to have some type of free reign to kill other Quincy's unlike the other Sternritters, even though killing and fighting is against the rules for the Quincy's. I say this because she killed that Quincy guy after they did the nasty, and just before this, Askin stops Basby and yhwach from fighting each other because he knows they would get punished. I thought maybe only Sternritters were not allowed to fight each other and they could fight or kill underlings, but Yhwach literally erased that Arrancar's arm for fighting with each other. So yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm overlooking this, but let me know what you guys think about that. So I do think Bambieta was an elite guard candidate just as much as Basby was because of her power and questionable authority. We really needed a female elite, and Bambieta could and would have been the perfect choice. So in the last tier, we have Sternritters that were definitely candidates for the elites, and I think one of the biggest questions is who did Askin replace in the guard? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but I do think everyone but one person in this tier could have been the one. But first up in this tier, we have Royd Lloyd, Sternritter Y the yourself. I don't think this will come as a surprise to anyone. This guy fought Yamamoto, withstood his Bankai, and completely destroyed pre-Mugen trained Kenpachi with no difficulty. I think it's almost certain that Royd was an elite. He had the power, and Yhwach trusted and tasked him with the role of fighting and stalling Yamamoto. This guy was super impressive, and it's possible Royd was the elite Askin replaced. I don't want to use the word underrated, but when talking about the strongest Sternritters, Royd never really is mentioned, which is crazy because he kind of has one of, or if not the best showing when compared to the elites. He fought Yamamoto, who I still stand by as the strongest captain in Thousand Year Blood War. So Grimmy is the next person in this tier, and I'm pretty sure everyone knows how powerful this self-proclaimed strongest Sternritter is. With this power of imagination, he is able to create lava, the literal void of outer space, and even summon the meteor that was going to destroy the Soul Society, which shocked people even like yhwach and Askin. Grimmy's strength is no question, and he probably would have killed Kenpachi if he had more training with his power, but what I do think is questionable is if he ever was an elite or maybe considered. I'm on the side of the theory that maybe Grimmy was an elite but was locked up because something happened. What exactly happened, I don't know, but it was bad enough that Yhwach apparently kept Grimmy locked up for a really long time. And every Sternritter except Latato kept their distance from him because they feared his power. Grimmy's mental state of being a psychopath who doesn't care about what happens to his allies is probably why Yhwach kept him locked up for so long. Dude is a glass cannon that was going to kill Kenpachi by any means he could think of, even if it meant killing his fellow Sternritters. I also do think Yhwach only let Grimmy out so that he could not only stall and weaken Kenpachi, but also so that he can get rid of Grimmy. So these last two in this tier, people are going to find interesting and maybe surprising, but up next is Noizal Sternritter W the Wind. Noizal is so underrated and downplayed that it's not even funny. This is because of his fight with Shutara and how quickly she dispatched of him with no difficulty, but people forget that matchups do matter. In the exact same way that Pernida was matched up with Kenpachi and also quickly dispatched of Kenpachi with no difficulty, and would have killed him if it wasn't for Mayuri saving his ass. I find it funny that people make fun of Noaizo but didn't make fun of Kenpachi for almost committing suicide against Pernida. People also forget that before Noaizo was killed by Shitara, he was no diffing and embarrassing Shikai Kirinji, a Royal Guard member who was literally known for his incredible speed. People have said Noaizo is weak because of how fast he got cut down, but forget the elites were one-shotted faster than Noaizo was. His downplay is just really annoying, honestly. Noaizo's Script the Wine is just busted, and he had the best defense and one of the best offensive abilities. Now, whether or not he was an elite or not is questionable. You can hate him or think he's weak, but he definitely was a candidate for the elites, seeing as how yhwach found him worthy enough to bring him to the royal palace and even chose him over people like Basby, who yhwach thought was fodder. So last in this tier is Quilge Sternritter J the Jail, which should come as no surprise. This guy has one of, or if not the best defense among the Sternritters. He has his jail ability that can seal anything or anyone as long as it's not a Quincy, and he has his terrifying slavery ability that can literally tear away the bodies of spiritual beings. All three of these things makes him a monster. So, do I think Quilge was an elite or at least considered a candidate? Absolutely, not only because of his crazy abilities I mentioned, but also for a few different reasons. People forget that Quilge was the only Sternritter aside from yhwach and arguably some of the elites like Lilibara who knew about Uryu and the Ishida family. Quilge also had special responsibilities like recruiting Arrancars and ruling over Wako Mundo, and was even tasked with dealing with Ichigo. Quilge obviously was valued and ranked super high within the Sternritters, and all three of these things no doubt shows how much yhwach trusted him and found him worthy. Alright everyone, that was my list of the Sternritters who I thought maybe or definitely were elite guard candidates. Let me know what you guys think about the list. If you guys would have switched someone around, then let me know who and why you would down in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so yet so we can hit our goal of 10K, and hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.